Well, this is the first of a mini series on getting keyboard input from users and guaranteeing that that you get what you're asking for. So this is the Python version. We'll be doing it later on in Lua and C#. So this one is just asking a fairly simple request, just type your name. If I hit the enter key instead of actually typing my name, it'll say just pressing the enter key or spacebar doesn't work. It pauses for 2 seconds and then comes back to this point here. So it's not going to accept that. If I press FR, just 2 letters, and press enter, it says try entering text between 3 and 6. So it's now saying, okay, you can type something, but we only want between 3 and 6 characters. So if I just spam the keyboard and then we press enter again, try entering between 3 and 6. Okay, so I'm not going to win. I've got to type in the correct amount. So let's do Fred because it's easy on the keyboard. And there it says username Fred. See how I used a capital letter, and as you can see, the F in Fred has now been capitalized. Now we're going on to, it wants to know age, so obviously it's looking for an integer input there. So as before, if I hit the enter key, it's not going to do anything. Let's try 10, whole number. Let's try 5.6. Again, it asks you for a whole number. Let's try -1. Okay, so we've got to try between 5 and 120. So we know what we're looking for. We've tried everything else. Let's put in a couple of 5s. There we go. So same principle now. We're looking for a floating point number because it's asking for height in meters. So again, just hitting the enter key doesn't do anything. Of course, a whole number integer will work, but it's no doubt a setting has been changed. It's got to be between certain values. So let's just put 5, and it says try a number from 0.5 to 2. So at least we know what our limits are. So let's try 10. No. Okay. 1.7. That'll do. Got it. Right. Do you like Python? Yes or no? So it's actually indicating here what does it want in. I'll just put maybe. Only starting with yes or no is accepted. Okay, let's try the empty key. No, it doesn't work either. I've got to obviously put something in. Let's try and get this really spammed up there. It accepts that. So now we've got a menu. So we've got this boxed in menu with 4 choices, and it's asking to choose what do we think of the utility. Well, obviously it's brilliant, but I'm not going to put that in initially. Let's try just hitting the enter key. No. Okay, let's try 5. No. Let's try 10. No. Well, obviously now we can put in the true answer, which is brilliant. And that's it. That's all over, and we're pressing enter to quit so that the console doesn't shut before we're finished with it, which it now has. Okay, so let's show you how this is now working. So we're in, I've got 3 files here. We've got keyboard demo, which is the one that's running the job. Then we've got a library folder, lib, and inside the library folder we've got console.py and keyboard.py or kboard.py. So let's look first of all at keyboard demo. Just increase the font a little bit there. So relatively short. It has a main call at the end here, and of course we've got a main function and another one called get row. Now the imports are interesting. You'll see we've got lib.console and lib.keyboard, and then we've given them a name to sort of let them be known by, and that's because we're using files that have been written by ourselves, not by they're not in the general Python library. These are two files which I've created here. So I've put them in a folder called lib, so we can use lib.console to import that file, and lib.keyboard or keyboard to import that file. And these two are used in getting everything going. Let me just briefly go to the console one, and I'm going to put a stop sign on. Let me show you this one. We've got 3. So this is the console library. We've got, just to get some stuff, there's a list of UTF-8 characters to make that menu box that you saw earlier. Then we've got some variables up here. There's one constant, which is the clear line thing. This is the ANSI code to clear a current line. I don't think I'm actually using that. I'm using something slightly different, but it's there. Then we've got a bunch of functions here, and then finally we've got this initialize at the bottom. So as with any Python script, when you run it, it will look to see if there's any commands it needs to run. It'll ignore all the definitions. So the first thing that's going to happen is it'll run the initialize. So I've put a stop sign on there so that that's run first of all. Let's go to the this one here, and we're going to call this. It'll run main, and that's going to go to console.clear here. So if I just press F7, I think that should work. Okay, so F7 made the console briefly appear, and then it's doing the imports. So we'll import that, which it does there, which imports the operating system. It sets these variables up. So we've got the window width 0, height 0, is console false, OS name empty at the moment, is initialized false. We've set up this one, and now of course it's going to go straight down to that initialize function here, which I did actually put a stop on, but obviously I didn't need to. Let's press the F7, and that's now going to initialize this console class. We've got some global things here because of Python's stupid way of handling variables, which you have heard me go on about no doubt on my other videos, but this really irritates me that if you declare a variable up here, it should be read write to the entire script, not read only, which it is unless you put this global in. So anyway, that's just coming from as a C# programmer. I can think this is absolutely ridiculous, but there you go. So if not is initialized, which it obviously isn't, so it's now going to run this. It's now going to call the operating system's get terminal size and return columns. So if we're running in a console, which we are, this should not cause an error. So let's press F7. Okay, and we do the same with the width and height. So let's read the window width. It says it's 111 wide by 27 deep. Okay, that just happens to be the size I last set it at. It's a bit chunky actually. Yeah. Anyway, no worries. And then the is console has now been set to true because we're running in a console. If this had errored because we're running in an IDE such as idle, then we'd have set it to these default values here of 80 and 25, and is console would have been false. So is initialized is true, and we're ready to go. We're also importing the keyboard one, which goes through its stuff. It gives us a couple of, there's a blank line here, which is just a series of spaces, actually 79 characters wide, and a 2-second delay. Again, we're not going to be doing anything here because we haven't called it to do anything here. So it's just been read in. And now we're on the back to the keyboard demo. If you remember, we started right at the top. We've imported our libraries. We've initialized both the console and the keyboard. We're now going through the any functions in here, and finally we're going to main. So we're now actually going to get started on the program, and we're going to call the console.clear. So the clear function, it's checking, is this a console, which we already know it is. That's true. And then depending on whether let's press F7 again. If we're running on Windows, then the OS name will be NT, which it is, and it will then call the OS system CLS. So press F7. CLS is done. Of course, it won't make any difference because the console never had anything on it anyway. And then we're going to return 0. Now, had we been running in idle or some other IDE, such as even Wing that I'm using here, if I had set it to not use an external console but to use this sort of IO thing down here, it would have come back with his console is false and would not have would have set the width and height to the default values and returned -1. But we've left it in a console, so we're returning 0. So we return that. So we now get is the window width, console window width, which is 111. Now the row has been set to -1 initially to assume that we're running in an IDE such as idle, or even if I'd set Wing to use this area down here. But if the console is running in a console, which it is, it's true, then the row is set to 0. Now the reason for this is that the remaining functions that get the strings, the integers, the floats and draw the menu can pass in this row value, which will determine whether or not to overwrite lines in the console rather than just tapping them out in a long list down below. So we're now going to be using the console's clear and set cursor position functions there. So first thing we want is to get our username, and we're going to use the keyboard get string. I'm going to pass in it the prompt, type your name. True is the do we want it in a title case? That's true, we want a title case. Then we're giving it a minimum length of 3 and a maximum length of 6, and then we're passing in the row. So let's run that one now. So if we're now in the keyboard class, and we've got the prompt, which is type your name with title is true, minimum value 3, maximum value 6, and we're on row 0. It's checking if the row is greater than or equal to 0, then we're increasing it by 1. The reason for that is that we're now going to write some stuff onto the console. So we want to make sure that the process input has got the correct row, which has now been set to 1. So we're now going to call this internal process input thing. All of the ones here, the get integer, the get float, the get boolean, all use process input. So this is like an internal function to get some data. So let's there it is, it's up here. Let's press F7 so that we start calling it. Again, we've got the prompt, type your name, minimum value 3, maximum value 6, data type string, and the row 1. Now the data type, if you remember, was the word string, which I told it to use down here. We've passed in the word string, so that's something that's been set. It's not the str data type, as you see up here. This is a word that happens to say string. We've got a flag here set valid input boolean set to false, so that we can now run a loop. So while valid input is false, which it is, then we're going to call the clear input field passing in the row. Now if row was -1 because we're in an IDE or we're running down here, then clear input field will do nothing. So let's go on to clear input field. So it's checking, is the row greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is. So we're going to set the cursor position onto that row, which is row 1. And then we're going to print a blank line. Blank is, if you remember, is 79 spaces. and then the cursor position is going to be reset again after it's printed that line. So let's press the F7. So we're now going to the set cursor position, and this sends the ANSI, the ANSI code, /033 is the escape code with the square brackets here, and that's going to send 1 and 0 to the terminal using these ANSI codes, which works now on Windows from Windows 10 onwards. You may have to fiddle with Windows 10 settings to get it to work. I'll put a link in the description on the website to get that sorted. But it now works okay and will respond to ANSI codes. So that's going to just set that cursor position there. If I press F7, you probably won't see anything on the console. It's at the beginning, but it was anyway, so no big deal. And then F7 again here. So now we're going to print our blank line, and let's get the console back. Yeah, we've now got the cursor position has moved down one because we've got a blank line has been printed right the way across, and then this one should set the cursor position back to where it was before. Let's just check on the console. Yep, it's back at the beginning again. So we've set the cursor position. We're now using Python's standard input function, and we're passing it an interpolated string. This is new from, I think, version 3.6. It might have been earlier, I can't remember. But you use this lowercase f in front of your quotes, and then you can put curly braces round, and you can put inside it a variable, a function, all kinds of stuff you can put inside there, and it will simply the output will be made as part of a string, and then we're adding behind it the underscore sign. So it's a really, really useful thing to use. Start using it if you don't already. Absolutely brilliant. I'm going to now put a stop sign here so that I can press the green let's continue playing with this, and then I can type in where it says type your name. So I'm going to hit just the enter key, and of course the user input is, I can't really get this any bigger, but the what's showing under the tooltip there is a double single quotes together, in other words an empty string. So the user input is an empty string. I've set the output to the same, which we will be using from now on. The reason of having both a user input and an output is that later on when we're doing numbers or booleans, we will be actually trying to convert the user input. So I wanted to know that we've got a record of what the user actually put in first of all. So next thing, data type, is it string? Yes it is. So this chunk here is going to run. F7. If the length of the user input is 0 and the minimum value is greater than 0, so minimum value, which we set, remember, to 3, yes we did, and length of the user input will be 0 because it's an empty string. So if those two conditions, that it's 0 length and the minimum value is greater than 0, which it is, then we're going to go to this line 42. So let's press F7. And it's going to call the error message function and pass to it the row, which is 1, the string no input, and the output, which is our empty string. That's what our user actually typed in, or I typed in, as I'm the user at the moment. So we'll F7 that, and then this is the error message running. So the message is set by default as just pressing the enter key or spacebar doesn't work. So let's press F7. So that's our current message. It's now going to check whether the error type is string, bool, not in, nan, or range. Now the error type is no input. So that's not actually listed down here. So none of these if-else ifs are going to do anything. It's going to keep the value. So let's just tab our way through those. So the message still reads, just pressing the enter key or spacebar doesn't work. Now the next bit is to check whether we are running in an IDE or not. because if we're in an IDE such as idle, or we were running it down here, then the row would be -1. So the row is 1. So we're going to change the message by putting it as these triple score message, sort of triple greater than message, triple less than message. So let's do that. So the message now reads, just pressing the enter key or spacebar doesn't work with those greater than and less than signs, just to kind of make it more obvious. If we were running in an IDE, it will just print the message with a new line character, the \n, which is new line character. Again, we're checking whether the row is greater than 0, and then we're clearing the input field again. So let's quickly do that. So just show you what the console's currently got in it. It's got the word type your name. Set the cursor row to there. Print the blank. Let's show you what the console. We've printed the blank line. The cursor is down here now because we printed a blank line over here. And now we should have our cursor back at the beginning. Everything cleared out. Now we're going to print the message. Just pressing the enter key or spacebar doesn't work, which is what we wanted. Again, we're just checking, is the row greater than 0? And then if it is, we're going to delay for 2 seconds. Done. And now we're going to again clear that row, which is done. We're back at the beginning again, so we've cleared out all the text that was on there, and our valid input is loop is continuing. So again, is asking us to put in an input. So let's again hit the green one so that I can do this. I'm just now going to type in FR, because if you remember, we wanted a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 6. So I just typed FR. Press enter. Again, the user input and output are being set. So we've got output as FR and user input as FR. Is the data type string? Yes, it is. This time, though, the length of the user input is not 0. So this line is not going to come in. Length of the user input is greater than max or less than min. Well, the minimum is 3. The maximum is 6. So this line is going to work because it is less than the minimum value. We've only put 2 letters in. So let's just check. Yep, so it's now going to send us this error message as before, but instead of sending it the no input one, it's going to send a string message. And it's also going to supply our output, the minimum value, and the maximum value of 6. So 3, 6, our output, which was FR, and the row, which is 1. We go down to the message one again. So we've got the default message as before. Just pressing the enter key doesn't work. Then we're going to check, is the error type string? Yes, it is. So this next line should work. Try entering text between min value 3, max value 6. So that's going to change our string now to something different. So let's check the message. So the message is now reading, try entering text between 3 and 6 characters, and then we're going to add the greater than and less than symbols to it. So our full message now ready to output is greater than 3 times, try entering text between 3 and 6 characters, less than 3 times. Again, we're checking, are we going to put this out? Yes, we are. Clear the field. Let me just check that the field is clear. Yes, it is. That's all empty, ready to go. We're going to print the message. Try entering text between 3 and 6 characters. And then, as before, we're going to sleep for 2 seconds. Clear the field. Let's just show you that the field has been cleared. Yes, it has. Now the valid input is now false again, because we still didn't enter what we were supposed to. So it's going to run through the whole thing. This time I'm going to put in a name between 3 and 6. So again, I'll run this to line 39 by just hitting the green button. Type your name again, Fred. Now notice I've put it in with a lowercase f there. Again, user input and output are matched. So output is lowercase Fred, user input lowercase Fred. Is the data type string? Yes, it is. Is it less? We're checking again whether the lengths are okay. That one's fine. We've passed that one. It's greater than or less than the maximum minimum values. We know that it's okay because we've put in a legitimate length. So finally, it's telling us that the Boolean flag valid input is now set to true because we've put in a valid string. It's the correct length. It's not an empty string. We're ready to go. So we press F7. Valid input is now true, so it will jump out of the loop and return the user input, which is still lowercase Fred, F-R-E-D. So we're back to our get string, which is what called it in the first place. We've got our result, Fred. Then it says if with title. So we sent it, if you remember, we sent the prompt. We sent the title as true. We want with title. So we're just going to use Python's built-in .title function. So the result should now have Fred with a capital F. We return it. And now we're going to print it out from our keyboard demo main function. What we just got in was the get string, type your name. And we're going to use again the interpolated string way of doing things and put username, which is Fred, and bunch it all up with see how I used a capital letter, F7, and there it is. See how I used a capital letter. So now we've successfully got in our string value with a capital letter of the specified length. This see how I use the capital letter was just kind of a put in there for tutorial purposes. Obviously you wouldn't use that if you're just trying to get somebody's name.